A chilly breeze swept through the bustling city streets as people hurried along, their heads down and thoughts consumed by their own lives. Neon lights flickered in the windows of nearby shops, and the scent of roasted chestnuts wafted from a food cart at the corner. It was one of those evenings where the world felt both alive and distant, a constant hum of energy that seemed to swallow everything in its path. Among the crowd, unnoticed and nearly invisible, a young boy sat on the curb, his tattered hoodie pulled tight against the cold. His face was smudged with dirt, his shoes barely holding together, and his eyes carried a weight far beyond his years. Despite his small stature, there was something striking about him, an intensity in the way he watched the world, as if he were searching for something or someone. Across the street, a sleek black car pulled up to a high-end restaurant. Out stepped a man whose presence demanded attention. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, he exuded confidence and success. This was Ethan Gray, a billionaire whose name was synonymous with power and wealth. His every move was calculated, his life a well-orchestrated symphony of triumph. Tonight, he was here for a rare moment of indulgence, a meal at the city's most exclusive restaurant. As Ethan made his way toward the entrance, the boy's gaze locked onto him. There was a flicker of recognition, though they had never met. Something about the man's demeanor, his air of invincibility, seemed to ignite a spark in the boy. He stood abruptly, his thin frame trembling with urgency. "Don't eat that," the boy shouted, his voice cutting through the noise of the street like a sharp blade. Ethan paused, his hand on the door of the restaurant. He turned, startled, to see the boy running toward him. The commotion caught the attention of passersby, who slowed to watch the scene unfold. Ethan's security detail moved to intercept, but he held up a hand, signaling them to stop. There was something in the boy's voice that intrigued him, something desperate and raw. The boy skidded to a halt in front of him, panting. "Please," he said, his voice trembling. "You can't eat there. Not tonight." Ethan frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What are you talking about, kid? Why shouldn't I?" The boy glanced around nervously, as if searching for the right words. "It's not safe. Just trust me, please." Ethan studied him for a moment, his curiosity piqued. The boy's sincerity was undeniable, but his story made no sense. Why would a homeless child care where a billionaire ate dinner? "You've got 10 seconds to explain yourself," Ethan said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Why shouldn't I go inside?" The boy hesitated, his eyes darting toward the restaurant. Because I know something you don't," he said finally. "Something that could save your life." Ethan's skepticism deepened, but so did his interest. He glanced at the restaurant, then back at the boy. The crowd around them murmured, their curiosity mirroring his own. "And what is it you think you know?" Ethan asked, folding his arms. The boy took a step closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "It's not the food. It's the people. Someone in there. They're planning something bad. And you're the target." Ethan's heart skipped a beat, though he didn't let it show. He was no stranger to threats. His wealth and status made him a magnet for them. But this was different. The boy's fear wasn't feigned. It was real, palpable, and it sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "Who told you this?" Ethan demanded. "How do you know?" The boy shook his head. "I can't tell you that, but I'm begging you to believe me. If you go in there, something terrible will happen." For a moment, Ethan considered dismissing the boy entirely. The story was far-fetched, the source questionable. Yet there was something about the boy's eyes, an earnestness that was impossible to ignore. Ethan had built his empire by trusting his instincts, and right now, his instincts were screaming at him to listen. Before he could respond, the restaurant's maitre d' appeared at the door, calling out to Ethan. "Mr. Gray, your table is ready." Ethan glanced at the boy one last time. "Stay here," he said, his voice low. "Don't move." But as he turned toward the restaurant, the boy grabbed his arm. "Don't go," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Please." Ethan froze, torn between reason and the inexplicable pull of the boy's warning. The crowd watched in silence, their breaths held, as the scene teetered on the edge of revelation. What would Ethan do? Would he walk into the restaurant and risk everything, or would he trust the word of a stranger, a boy with nothing to his name but a desperate plea? The answer hung in the air, heavy and unresolved, as the city lights flickered like a heartbeat, counting down the seconds to a decision that could change everything. Ethan stood frozen, the weight of the boy's words pressing against him like a gust of icy wind. The maitre d' waited patiently by the restaurant door, smiling politely, but the air around them felt charged, as if an invisible clock were ticking down. The boy's small hand gripped Ethan's arm with surprising strength, his eyes wide and pleading. "I don't know why I believe you." Ethan murmured, almost to himself, "But there's something about this." He trailed off, glancing at the restaurant's grand entrance. The glowing interior seemed so inviting, a world of luxury and ease. But now it felt like a trap. The boy let out a shaky breath, as though Ethan's hesitation gave him hope. "You're not like them," he said quietly, almost as if it were a realization. "You're listening. Most people wouldn't." Ethan knelt slightly to meet the boy's eyes, his voice softening. "Start from the beginning. Who are you? And why are you here tonight, of all nights?" The boy hesitated, his face a mix of fear and determination. "My name's Caleb," he said finally. "I don't have much, but I've been watching that place." He nodded toward the restaurant. "I sleep nearby sometimes. I hear things. People don't notice me because, well, why would they?" Ethan frowned. "What kind of things?" Caleb looked down, his fingers twisting nervously. "Men talking, whispering late at night when no one else is around. They don't work there. They just meet. They talk about you sometimes. About how tonight's their chance to—" He stopped abruptly, his voice catching. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Their chance to what?" Caleb shook his head. "I don't know all of it, but I heard them say your name, and I know enough to see they're serious." Ethan straightened, his mind racing. It wasn't the first time he'd faced threats. In his line of work, enemies came with the territory. But this felt different. Calculated, personal, and the fact that a homeless boy, a complete stranger, was risking so much to warn him made it impossible to ignore. "Mr. Gray," the maitre d' called again, his tone growing impatient. "Is everything all right?" Ethan raised a hand to signal he needed more time. He turned back to Caleb. "If you're telling the truth, then I owe you. But if this is some kind of game—" "It's not," Caleb interrupted, his voice firm despite its tremble. "I don't want anything from you. I just don't want you to get hurt." Ethan studied him for a long moment. He had met plenty of liars, con artists, and manipulators in his time. Caleb didn't fit the mold. His fear was too raw, his urgency too genuine. "All right," Ethan said finally. "I'll bite. But you're coming with me." "To do what?" Caleb stammered, taking a step back. "Why?" "If what you're saying is true, I need to hear every detail," Ethan said. "And if it's not, well, I'll deal with that too." He gestured toward his car. "Get in." Caleb hesitated, glancing nervously at the restaurant. Then with a small nod, he followed Ethan toward the sleek black car waiting by the curb. Ethan's driver opened the door, eyeing Caleb with suspicion, but Ethan waved him off. "Just drive," he said, settling into the back seat. Caleb slid in beside him, shrinking into the corner as if he expected to be thrown out at any moment. As the car pulled away from the restaurant, Ethan turned to Caleb. "You've got my attention. Now tell me everything." Caleb swallowed hard, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "I don't know where to start. I've been living on the streets for a couple of years now. You learn to notice things, people, patterns, stuff that doesn't feel right. That restaurant," he shuddered. "It's not what it seems. I've seen men go in there late at night when it's supposed to be closed. They talk about deals, about people who could get in their way. And they're always careful. Except last week." "What happened last week?" Ethan pressed. "I was hiding near the dumpsters," Caleb said, his voice dropping. "It's warm there sometimes. These two guys came out the back door. They didn't see me, but I heard them talking. One of them said your name. He said, 'Gray won't see it coming.' Then they laughed." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "And you're sure they meant me?" Caleb nodded. "They mentioned your company, too. Something about how tonight was the best time to send a message. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew it was bad." The car fell silent as Ethan processed the boy's words. If Caleb was right, someone inside that restaurant had plans for him. Plans he narrowly avoided by listening to a stranger's warning. But the question remained, why? And who was behind it? Ethan pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen as he texted his security team. "I'm not taking any chances," he muttered. "If there's a threat, I'll find it." Caleb watched him nervously. "Are you mad at me?" Ethan looked up, surprised. "Mad? No, you might have just saved my life." Caleb's face softened with relief, but the tension in the car was still thick. Ethan's thoughts raced as he pieced together the fragments of the puzzle. Someone wanted him out of the picture, and they were willing to go to extreme lengths to make it happen. But why? And how deep did this go? As the car sped through the city streets, Ethan felt a strange sense of gratitude toward the boy sitting beside him. Caleb's warning had changed the course of the evening, and possibly much more. But the danger was far from over. The truth was out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. And Ethan was determined to find it before it found him. The car came to a smooth stop outside one of Ethan's private properties, a modern, high-rise building with tinted windows that gleamed in the city lights. Caleb hesitated as the driver opened the door, but Ethan motioned for him to follow. "Come on," Ethan said. "You're not going back out there alone. Not tonight." Inside, the apartment was sleek and minimal, a stark contrast to Caleb's reality on the streets. The boy's eyes darted around, taking in the plush furniture, the towering windows, and the faint hum of technology embedded in every corner. It was a world he'd only seen in magazines, a life he could barely comprehend. Ethan set his phone on the counter and turned to Caleb. "I've got my team looking into the restaurant. If what you're saying is true, we'll know soon enough. In the meantime, you're safe here." Caleb nodded, though his unease lingered. "What if they come looking for you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They won't find me here," Ethan said, his tone calm but firm. "This place is secure." As the evening wore on, Caleb began to relax, though his eyes kept flicking toward the door as if expecting trouble. Ethan made a call to order food, real food, not the scraps Caleb was used to scavenging, and watched as the boy hesitantly ate, his hunger outweighing his hesitation. "You've been through a lot," Ethan said after a while. "But you still went out of your way to warn me. Why?" Caleb shrugged, his fork pausing midair. "I guess I just knew it was the right thing to do. I don't have much, but I've seen what happens when people look the other way. I couldn't do that." Ethan leaned back, studying the boy. There was a strength in Caleb that reminded him of his own younger self, a time when life hadn't been cushioned by wealth and privilege. For a moment, he felt an unexpected connection, a shared understanding that went beyond their vastly different lives. The quiet was broken by a sudden chime from Ethan's phone. He grabbed it quickly, his face hardening as he read the message. "They found something," he said, his voice clipped. "What is it?" Caleb asked, his fork clattering onto the plate. Ethan's eyes narrowed. There was a setup. Inside the restaurant, hidden in the private dining area. My security team found listening devices, and he trailed off, his jaw tightening. A briefcase rigged with explosives. Caleb's face went pale. I told you it wasn't safe." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "You did. And you were right." He turned away, pacing the room as he processed the news. Whoever did this was sending a message, but it's not just about me. They wanted to make a statement to everyone connected to me. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "What are you going to do?" Ethan stopped pacing, his eyes meeting Caleb's. "I'm going to find out who's behind this and make sure they never get the chance to try again. But first, I owe you. You didn't just save me tonight. You saved everyone who could have been caught in that blast." Caleb blinked, surprised by the gratitude in Ethan's voice. "I didn't do it for that," he said quietly. I couldn't let it happen." A small smile tugged at the corner of Ethan's mouth. "That doesn't make it any less important." The next few days were a whirlwind. Ethan's security team worked around the clock, tracing the plot back to a rival who had been quietly building resentment for years. It was a bitter betrayal, but one Ethan faced head-on, ensuring the man was exposed and arrested before he could cause more harm. Through it all, Caleb stayed at Ethan's side, his life transformed in ways he never imagined. He wasn't just a homeless boy anymore. He was someone Ethan trusted, someone who had proven that courage and decency could come from the most unexpected places.